To bring the resistance down.
Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Praja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Praja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki, Shri Radha Govinda Devi Ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 2, chapter 6, text number 4. Tadgatram vastu sharanam Sobhagasya chabhajanam Tvagasya sparshavayoscha Sarvamedhasya chaivahi Tadgatram vastu sharanam Sobhagasya chabhajanam Tvagasya sparshavayoscha Sarvamedhasya chaivahi Tadgatram vastu sharanam Sobhagasya chabhajanam Tvagasya sparshavayoscha Sarvamedhasya chaivahi Tadgatram vastu sharanam Sobhagasya chabhajanam Tvagasya sparshavayoscha Sarvamedhasya chaivahi. Tadgatram vastu sharanam Sobhagasya chabhajanam Sarvamedhasya chaivahi. Tadgatram vastu sharanam Sobhagasya chabhajanam Tvagasya sparshavayoscha Sarvamedhasya chaivahi. Tadgatram vastu sharanam Sobhagasya chabhajanam Tvagasya sparshavayoscha Sarvamedhasya chaivahi. Tadgatram vastu sharanam Sobhagasya chabhajanam Tvagasya sparshavayoscha Sarvamedhasya chaivahi. Tat, his, gatram, bodily surface, vastu sharanam, of the active principles of all articles, Sobhagasya, of all auspicious opportunities, cha, and bhajanam, the field of production, tvak, skin, asya, his, sparsha, touch, vayo, of the moving airs, cha, also, sarva, all kinds of, medasya, of sacrifice, cha, also, eva, certainly, he, exactly. The bodily surface is the breeding ground for the active principles of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. His skin, like the moving air, is the generating center for all kinds of sense of touch and is the place for performing all kinds of sacrifice. Repeat after me. His bodily surface is the breeding ground for all the active principles of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. His skin, like the moving air, is the generating center for all kinds of sense of touch, and is the place for performing all kinds of sacrifice. Prabhupada praise the vibration of Prabhupada. The air is the moving agent of all the planets, and as such, the generating centers for promotion to the deserving planets. The sacrifices are his bodily surface and are naturally the origin of all auspicious opportunities. Om Jnana Timinandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upagadhamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupang Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakopa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Very nice to be with all of you today. It's been a great privilege these last few days being here, and very grateful. I'm a little nervous today amidst Shri Radha Govinda and all the Vaishnavas, and I pray for your permission and blessing to say something of value and somehow bring us closer to Krishna in some sort of way. So we're reading from the second chapter, from the second canto, chapter 6. This is entitled the Purusha Shukta Confirmed. And as we've been hearing from these opening verses, the description of the Virat Rupa of the Lord, indicating to us how nothing exists within this world until it first exists in Krishna, and particularly in this feature, in this form that is being shared by Lord Brahma to Narada Muni, a particular form of the Lord, explaining to us that it's first through his seeing that we can see, through his voice and his active principles of his existence, that we can have any perception of this world. And what's really nice in this part of the Bhagavatam is that it's a beginning section, you could say, of approaching God realization. Approaching the God realization in a way that is actually perceivable to our senses, because these descriptions of the Virat Rup are something that we can actually contain our mind on, we can actually meditate upon it, whereas when it gets to the more esoteric parts of Krishna's pastimes, it requires a little more purification. And that is why the Bhagavatam has a very progressive element to it, you could say, throughout the cantos. And here it's saying in text number 4 that his bodily surface is the breeding ground for the active principles of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. His skin, like the moving air, is the generating center for all kinds of sense of touch and is the place for performing all kinds of sacrifice. The main principle in my experience with this part of the Bhagavatam is to see how Krishna is behind everything, and how the Krishna factor, or you could say the Krishna connection, is made available to us in so many ways. I'm reminded of this moment in the Gita, in the 6th chapter, where Krishna tells Arjuna that for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, he's never lost, nor am I never lost to him. And this point that Prabhupada makes in the purport there is that even though the devotee may see separate manifestations of Krishna's energy, he still understands that this is all part of the Supreme Lord. And in fact, he says that everything, nothing can exist without Krishna, and everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. And this is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. And the Shastra is giving us so much direction with how to plug into perceiving Krishna at whatever level we may be. And we see that that is a very broad spectrum of how to increase our Krishna consciousness. But I was meditating on this, how even though we have it so clearly mapped out and we have the entire process there before us, and we have all the answers and we have all the direction, still somehow we find ourselves at times a little lost, a little discouraged, or maybe not knowing what to do. Even as devotees that are practicing for some time, we find that we get to a point of struggle or confusion. And I had an interesting experience the other day as I was making my way to the great Yuga Dharma activity. I was at the New York subway, and I had my card. I was loading up the card, and I had the information of where I needed to go to meet everyone in the next destination. But I was alone, and I was definitely feeling a little confused. And as I was standing, looking at those rotating, bars, I was thinking to myself, am I really going to make it on the other side? Because I must say that whole, train network system is quite bewildering, especially for someone from South Africa. But then, lo and behold, behind me I heard this voice, Haribol, you're going on Harinam? And who, none other than His Grace Roy Ramprabhu was there, and it was such a relief to find this association in the middle of this subway, and after that moment I just felt very connected, and we sat in the train and he showed me how to get there. He even showed me the app that I should download if I want the inside information on the Metro Rail system. And my whole experience, actually, to tell you the truth, was completely transformed. I felt that by the mercy of this Vaishnav, I could enter into that Sangha with all of you and perform this devotional service. And I mean, although like the invitation was there and I know I had the opportunity and the service, it was really that connection of a person that brought it to life. And this is something that I'm kind of meditating on, especially in this section that the Purusha Shukta confirmed. I don't know about some of you, but sometimes there's these moments in the Shastra that get a bit technical, overwhelming, quite frankly, just sometimes a bit hairy, to make it through. But it is through the Vaishnavas, and we can see through Srila Prabhupada's purports particularly, that he gives us a way, a language to understand it. And also when we catch the narrative or the greater contour of the conversations, we can also understand those conclusions. And even in this section, although Lord Brahma goes through quite an elaborate description, he does conclude with the process of surrender, of surrendering being that means of understanding Krishna. Krishna says that in the 18th chapter, Bhaktyamam abhijananti yavanyaschasmi tattva, that one can understand me as I am through this process of devotional service. But we see that we need help, and even in our own life we have the grace and the mercy of the Vaishnavas, but we should also see how we can be that instrument for others. And for those of you that are going out every day trying to share Krishna consciousness, this is a very important meditation, because just like Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is giving us this broad spectrum of plugging into Krishna consciousness, it is also the responsibility of the preacher to curate, the process in such a way that people can really access it and take it to the next level. And we see that our wonderful Krishna consciousness movement has so many processes available for people to plug in from wherever they may be. And it's really enlivening when I was joining you for the last few days, just seeing how people who walk by, they have these interesting, you could say, reflections. You know, you usually get people will look at the Harinam party. Out of thousands among those in New York, hardly one will gaze upon the Harinam party and then start to contemplate, is this something I should engage with? Is this something I should go and participate? But then it's usually one of the active book distributors, especially Prabhuji, I've seen you've been very vibrantly engaging with people as you need to attract their attention and really connect them in some sort of way. And then once that first contact takes place, we see that wherever that person may be, you want to start the conversation and somehow bring it to the Krishna consciousness. And it seems like we will go out of our way to be able to just connect a person to their next step. And it's really something to meditate on as we become that opportunity for these people's Krishna conscious development. Because otherwise, if the Harinam party wasn't out there, if the book distributors weren't doing their thing, those people would have never had that opportunity. So we want to see ourselves as being these instruments of Krishna's mercy and seeing how this transcendental process takes place. And so there's a very nice verse that comes from the 10th chapter in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is describing the activities of his pure devotees and what they are going through in their appreciation and experience of Krishna consciousness. Text number 9 of chapter 10. Matchita matgata prana bodhayantaha parasparam katayanchastramam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me, and their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So now there's a very interesting purport here that I would like to share with you as Prabhupada speaks about this process of getting connected to Krishna consciousness and how it progresses. So in the second paragraph he starts, in the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself. And in the mature stage, they are actually situated in love of God. So this is really interesting, how in the beginning, our meditation is simply to try and get up, be there, be ready for the morning program, or remember that we have a service to, clean something, or be, the mechanics of the service are there, and they're very much the focus. But over time, as we continue with that, an actual appreciation for the deeper aspects of Krishna consciousness will develop. Once situated in that transcendental position, they can relish the highest perfection which is exhibited by the Lord in his abode. Lord Chaitanya likens transcendental devotional service to the sowing of a seed in the heart of the living entity. There are innumerable living entities traveling throughout the different planets of the universe, and out of them there are few who are fortunate enough to meet a pure devotee and get the chance to understand devotional service. This devotional service is just like a seed, and if it is sown in the heart of a living entity, and if he goes on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, that seed fructifies just as the seed of a tree fructifies with regular watering. The spiritual plant of devotional service gradually grows and grows until it penetrates the covering of the material universe and enters into the Brahmajyoti effulgence in the spiritual sky. In the spiritual sky also that plant grows more and more until it reaches the highest planet, which is called Goloka Vrindavan, the supreme planet of Krishna. Ultimately, the plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and rests there, Gradually, as a plant grows fruits and flowers, that plant of devotional service also produces fruits, and the watering process in the form of chanting and hearing goes on. This plant of devotional service is fully described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila chapter 19. It is explained there that when the complete plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, one becomes fully absorbed in love of God. And then he cannot live even for a moment without being in contact with the Supreme Lord, just as a fish cannot live without water. In such a state, the devotee actually attains the transcendental qualities in contact with the Supreme Lord. The Srimad Bhagavatam is also full of such narrations about the relationship between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Therefore, the Bhagavatam is very dear to the devotees, as stated in the Bhagavatam itself. 12, 13, 18, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam, Amala Yad Vaishnavam Priyam. In this narration, there is nothing about material activities, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only narration in which the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and his devotees is fully described. Thus, the realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures, just as a young boy and girl take pleasure in association. So it is really amazing to see these progressive aspects of devotional service take place. And we can also see how we can be a part of that in the lives of others, and in the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, in how we are actively engaged in sharing that process with others every day. And it's really encouraging to note that, you know, it is through the transcendental process of Krishna consciousness and remaining steadfast in that we can overcome and progress through these higher stages, as it's explained from Shraddha to Sadhusanga, Bhajana Kriya, and through to Anartana Vritti. We see that these stages are not left out as we move through them. As Prabhupada was saying, the continuous chanting of Hare Krishna does take place throughout all those stages. And even if, you know, there comes the days where we are just trying to keep awake, you know, in the Kirtan and keep present there, we should know that if we just continue with that, there will be a day that the true form of the Lord will become manifest if we remain sincere and steadfast in that practice. And with relationship to the point today is to just see how we can also find that Krishna connection for others in whatever way, bringing them in the progressive steps, just as Bhagavatam and the devotees have done for us. So this is pretty much the essence of what I wanted to share today. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. I don't know if there are any comments or questions. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's even to, we can see to enter the Dham requires the permission from certain personalities. You know, if you want to be in the association of the Vaishnavas, there's this kind of grant to come to the United States. I had to have a very special visa to get in. This something is required, but we see in our process that it's the mercy of the Vaishnavas at every step, and it's really important to see that, because anything separate from that, if we think it's our own doing, if we think that it's our qualification or our right. Harivilas was speaking on Monday about entitlement, that entitlement consciousness, which is something coming from the mode of ignorance, really destroys your relationships. Whereas, you see the Trinadapi level is having that deep respect and not claiming anything other than the mercy. Yes, ma'am.
I have a half comment, half question.
Mhm.
When you were speaking about how when we go out every day chanting and distributing books, we're like inviting people to practice sadhana bhakti. I kind of had this small realization lately that, I visit my parents maybe once or twice a year, and the last time I went was like a few weeks before I came here. I came here a couple weeks ago.
I can't hear what you're saying.
Okay, can you hear me now? I was saying that it's a half comment, half question. The comment was, I visit my parents once or twice a year. And last time I went to visit my mom, she's very favorable to Krishna consciousness, but it's like, there's the TV, she has like a cat and a dog, and it's like, it's complete Maya in the house. But she'll chant and she'll take prasadam. And then like when I was leaving, I was like, why do I even do that? She's not going to be like a full-time sadhaka in this lifetime. Might as well just like forget that relationship and just focus on my own bhajan. But then I was contemplating this, and I was thinking, well, actually this is an eternal soul. This is a jiva, part and parcel of Krishna. So even if that soul does not become a full-time sadhaka in this life, it's like adding to the bank account. She's chanting Hare Krishna throughout her life, maybe only like once a month or a couple times a month when she talks to me on the phone. So my realization with this, I also apply it to people that we meet out on the street. People are hearing Hare Krishna. Most of them are probably not going to be full-time sadhakas in this life, but the more and more we give them, we have to have like a long-term vision that, okay, maybe in the next life, or maybe just in 2 or 3 lifetimes, they're going to be a brahmachari or brahmachari in the ashram or some nice devotee. So that was kind of my comment, but adding to that as a question, what is the proper understanding of the people that are walking past the Harinam? They don't even take a book, they just hear the holy names. What is the destination for such a person?
Well, yeah, firstly, thank you for giving those examples. We know that from the Shastra has described to us that, this holy name of Krishna is completely transcendental, and at the point of contact with that, when the jiva comes in touch with the holy name, that their entire destiny is transformed, and no material circumstance can interrupt that. It is simply a matter of time for that to manifest, as we were hearing about this seed that grows. So perhaps there are sowings of the seed that take place, but cannot necessarily be, we cannot necessarily perceive that crop just yet. But the destination is very auspicious. Perhaps we were those living entities once upon a time that stumbled across a Harinam or just heard the holy name by chance. In the first canto of Bhagavatam, in the first chapter, it even describes that by unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, one can be free from the repetition of birth and death. So I would never underestimate any presence of the holy name in the life and destiny of the spirit soul. But I would also say that many of those results are actually perceivable. I mean, we were speaking recently about the power of prasadam, the cookie, bhakta that takes, from starting from there and then surrendering their whole life, that it definitely starts and continues somewhere. And I feel that to the degree that we become more, purified by the process, the capacity to share that light is wider. I mean, to tell you the truth, when Ram Roy Prabhu chants at the end of the Harinam, it just feels like the energy just explodes, like I've never could perceive before in such a space. And I mean, just in all truth, I feel like it's due to a level of consciousness of the, of his experience with the holy name. And it's just so perceptible how people even relate very, very differently, when that is going on. And Srila Prabhupada showed that, by the power of a pure devotee, the whole world can change. He really showed that. So definitely our ability to come closer to Krishna will, make that process faster for others. And for your parents, it is definitely the case that, becoming a pure devotee is the best thing you can do for them. But to remember that their Krishna consciousness is their attachment to you as well. And your mother could very well be thinking of you at the time of her passing, and a favorable relationship will definitely help that. And I'm sure there's a way to see it even in this life. I mean, for myself, my dad is a Christian minister. He's a priest, and I grew up in the church, and at the time of taking to Krishna consciousness, it was a little awkward, as this is quite foreign from the Christian paradigm. But over the years, kind of dealing with it. And I really wanted to leave my studies, actually, in my second year. I wanted to join the temple and leave. My dad said, you'll finish this degree, and afterwards you can take as many sabbaticals as you want. So then I kind of wrestled around it over the years. But actually, the real transformation only happened 2 years ago, when they came to the Polish tour. My parents came all the way to Poland to witness what I do with His Holiness Nrsimha Maharaj and the festivals there. And I can tell you, more happened in those 3 days than they did in the 10 years that I've been trying to, be Krishna conscious. And it was incredible, the power of the culture and others, and also for them to just see what is going on there. But they would never have got there had we not maintained some level of a relationship and seen, just the naturalness of father and son, there. And I feel like there is, these things are very much time, place, and circumstance, and different relationships we have with people or parents, and we have to take those things into consideration. But in the general principle, maintaining the connection is always favorable, and to the degree that we are more pure and purified, we can help others. And I would definitely say that any step, whether any morsel of prasadam, hearing of the holy name, gazing upon the devotees of the deities, any contact with Krishna is to the eternal benefit. There is no loss or diminution. It is completely, eternally kept. And I think we, as preachers, we want to keep that in mind as we go out there, because that also allows us to be a lot more detached, understanding that this is up to Krishna and how he wants it to go, and that these, the effects of these things will take their own shape in time. So that was how I would answer that. I don't know if there are any other comments on that question, Prabhu.
I'd like to continue on the theme just now, and also at the conclusion, make a contribution. What does that say? A rising tide raises all boats in the harbor. So it's the degree of the purity of the chanter, it's the degree of the intensity of the desire of the devotee. Like Srila Prabhupada, it's funny, I'm saying boats in the harbor. Boston Harbor, I wish that you may deliver them. I have no other desire. ashram and a cultural institution, the brahmachari doesn't rise of his own accord unless a bell is sounded in the cultural institution. Similarly, everyone is sleeping in the age of Kali, and only by the calling of the great acharya, the pure devotee, does everyone rise up and take the actual duties of human life. In the 29th chapter of the 4th canto, I forget the exact verse number, what is it? The Lord, seeing the devotee's merciful attempt, try, enlightens the people from within automatically. So there's a very special reciprocation, and it is the ultimate level of personalism. So it's, yes, by the Lord's will, but it's not like, well, what me worry, like whatever, it's up to Krishna. I'm kind of a dullard about it, but you apply your whole heart and soul and desire. There's one place, the Lord Brahma's prayers for creative energy, chapter 9 in the 3rd canto, where Lord Brahma is in these poor living entities, blasting hot summer, freezing cold winter, and winds, and so many bodily disturbances, mental agonies. I wish that you may deliver them. And that's his motivation. And he sees that what he's doing as Lord Brahma is part of the whole, seemingly indirect. He's providing everybody to get a material body, but it's part of the ultimate rectification process to bring everybody back home, back to Godhead. So Prabhupada writes something in one of the purports in that section, that such prayers of the devotee for the upliftment of the fallen souls is always answered, always blessed by the Lord. In other words, it's the best thing to desire in this world. So, my little experience is like going out there continuously. It's like lifting weights. It's like training athletically to get more strength. The more you do it, the more you do it, the more you do it. So therefore, Harinam, chanting in public, it's the order of Lord Chaitanya, and he's assured us all perfection. Lord Chaitanya Thakur says, don't think that this chanting and dancing won't lead to the desired success. It will, if you do it. If you don't do it, then it's just like trying to understand what the honey tastes like in the closed jar. You can look at it with your eyes, you can look at the outside of the bottle, but you'll never taste the honey. So, you were saying, I forget your exact words, but the essence was that we should appreciate what other devotees are going through. I'm trying to understand it more. Can you refresh my memory? What you're saying? I get the exact context. I have something really nice I want to share.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Maybe you can.
I was referring to. I don't know. The entitlement part, or
No, not the sense of entitlement. Earlier than that.
the stages of devotional service that we are taken through from being attached to the service itself, and then the deeper aspects of Krishna becoming manifest and into us, or
It was a devotees appreciating other devotees.
Metro station?
yeah,
We were talking about the metro station? We were talking about the metro station?
getting access into devotional service by the mercy of other Vaishnavas.
All right, anyway, I thought I heard you were saying how you might not understand. There are many, you used the word curate, it's very nice, curator that you've seen, but one definition is one who in the exhibition of art chooses what will be seen by the general public who comes to that exhibition. So that there's so many diversified ways of presenting Krishna consciousness and devotees in different curating positions. So, appreciating the diversified aspect of feelings of his topmost Move Prakriti Srimad Radharani, and the transformations of ecstatic love that Lord Chaitanya was exhibiting and also displaying to show the highest principles of love of Godhead to the people of this world. So this is chapter 18, verses 15, 16, and 17. Even Lord Krishna is struck with wonder at seeing the transformations of ecstasy in his devotees. If Krishna himself cannot estimate the limits of such condition, such emotions, how could others? And this is the feature little jewel here, verses 16 and 17. Krishna himself cannot fully understand the conditions, the mode of progress, the happiness and unhappiness, and the moods of ecstatic love of his devotees. He therefore accepts the role of a devotee to taste these emotions. What did Prabhupada say? When we see apparent unhappiness in the devotee, we should understand that it's ecstatic love. Prabhupada's passport photo, which you see on the pamphlet, India's Message of Peace and Goodwill, Srimad Bhagavatam, and some of the 11 volumes. So, was it Govinda Dasi? I think she said, Prabhupada, you look so sad. And Prabhupada said, oh, that was a moment of ecstasy. Prabhupada was finally posing to get his passport photo taken to inform sanction from the state bank of India that he doesn't have any outstanding debts, you know, his family just sign off on that and say, you're good to go. There's so many problems. Finally, you know, like one leading person saying, you know, well, you're sponsored by a private man, and if you were sponsored by a company or an institution, you would say, so I will not pass your case. Just one thing. So Prabhupada, and this is verse 18. Ecstatic love of Krishna makes Krishna and his devotees dance, and it also dances personally. In that way, all three dance together. One who wants to describe the transformations of ecstatic love of Krishna is like a dwarf trying to catch the moon in the sky. So, in the 8th canto, Prabhupada says in one purport that it's not that Krishna is only pleased with his topmost devotees. He's pleased even with the brand new devotee. And as they continue, then they will achieve complete perfection. So Krishna can see that, so he's pleased with the new devotee also. So we should develop very deep eyes of vision to see the potentiality of Krishna's devotees, especially those who are initiated. What is it? In the 5th verse of the offering respect to one who is duly initiated, and even more second initiation, Brahman initiation, worshiping the deity. Sanatana Goswami, who wanted to give up his body, and Lord Chaitanya is arguing with him, this is my property, how can you just Dasa tell him not to do this unlawful thing? If you entrust property to another, then it's not that person's right to use it or give it away at his own, it's in his care. You know, like we write on our property in care of such and such Das, such and such deity Das. And there's I think it's Shastra quoted, or maybe it's Lord Chaitanya saying. Now, Prabhupada says in the purport, at the time of initiation, the Lord accepts the devotee's body as spiritual, fit to exchange loving mellows with him. So that's kind of a deep insight as to why, you know, it's not just ritual that we call Prabhu, you know, but master, meaning that your individual relationship with Krishna has so much to teach me, enlighten me, and inspire me by your unique relationship with Krishna. So
Thank you so much.
I just have one small point regarding the benefit that people get from hearing the line touching the bullshit. Prabhupada time reading one word of the book or hearing one syllable, or even when Dasa was going to give them another human life, so they would be able to actually engage in activities of self-realization. So it was actually saving so many people. Hundreds every day, at least.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Antraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Antagori Vaishnava ki, Nitai Gaur Premananda.